Hey,
comic. Hi, Jason. What do you have on tap for us today?
well, today was something that I wasn't sure when I'd actually have the time to, or when would be a good time to talk about this. But it turns out that like April was like the 10-year anniversary of the release of Bloodborne on the PS4. It's like hailed as like one of the console's best exclusives and a key like entry in from Software's Soulsborne genre, like the game kinds of games that are just like you were really challenging, but demand like a certain level of commitment from the player, but also like reward the player for that sense of satisfaction after if they if they adhere to the game standards. Now, interestingly enough, while it's like there haven't actually been a lot of other media spin-offs for these games, but for whatever reason, it turns out that there's been a like decent amount of like Bloodborne comics like produced for English speaking audiences. Not Japanese, but English. Like American and English people and all. It's like it's kind of weird, and you also kind of wonder like why this would be the case. For like for the specific game, but that's just how it turned out. Titan Comics got the license, and while they've done like Dark Souls comics, for whatever reasons, like I got the like started reading the Bloodborne comics. It's like after they produced and after I played the game as well, because the game is a lot of fun, but also just very challenging and demanding in terms of like from Software's line of venerated murder hobo simulators. So I enjoyed it, and you know who else enjoys them? Uh, Steve. Hey, Steve. Welcome back, man.
Hello.
Yeah, glad to have you back, man. So, I mean, do you think these games are like basically like murder hobo simulators? Elden Ring included.
Yeah, you don't generally need a very good reason to murder the things in front of you other than they don't like you, or you can, and so you do. So yes, I think they could very easily slip into Murder Hobo Simulator.
Yeah, and that's kind of basically what you do in Bloodborne as well. And any context as to like why you're doing all this murdering, well, you're going to like like read the descriptions like for every single like item like piece of armor or weapon that you've got in order to like learn like greater context for that.
In
And
typical From Software fashion.
yes, that's true. Or you can just like rely on guys like Vadividya to like break it all down for you, which I'll admit to I've done in the past. But it's like I played through Bloodborne, and I didn't defeat get Garam at the end. I just took my win after defeating Murgo's wet nurse, and then I decided to check out these comics because well I was like, hey, kind of wondering like hey, okay, so you've got like other creators like taking a crack at these things who it's basically like a Japanese. The game itself is like a Japanese interpretation of like Victorian era like horror, like heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. And this is like and then you've got other like like English creators like reinterpreting that. Specifically, its writer for the first 4 volumes, Alice Cott. Cott is a guy who was like like a writer of like like some note for like for working on like titles for Marvel and DC. It's like an Image, but he never quite like nailed like next big thing status, mainly because his style of writing tended to go off in like weird like strange tangents. My most significant experience with him was in reading his series Zero, which was about a secret agent in the near future. It's like in the like climate collapse. I think he was supposed to have like implied as like causing like the first issue, and then like things are flat. We're supposed to be flashing back to it, showing us how we got to that point over the first couple of volumes. But then, well, he abandoned that and decided to like start running a biography of like beat poet Charles Bukowski in the final volume. So yeah, this is the guy they got to write Bloodborne comics, and the first volume at least is actually like a pretty solid um adaptation of the experience of playing Bloodborne, in the sense that it's about just murdering like strange beasts because hey, like they're in front of you and you've got no other direction for that, because like the hunter in this first volume is a non-binary character who's basically, then I'm told that they need to get pale blood in order to transcend the hunt, which is part of the is a plot mechanic from the game, even if like you don't actually like have any idea what that means. But basically, Cot fashions like that setup into a story where where the hunter teams up with the child that actually has the pale blood, and then tries to find a way to get out of this death loop, the death time loop that they've found themselves in. In terms of like telling an actual story, it's like this probably isn't one for people looking for that, but it does capture the experience of just like murdering strange beasts, and just pushing through um like a strange environment, just killing whatever you comes across because it's trying to kill you first, and dying, and then trying to find a way to like triumph over that. I originally wrote that this is a good adaptation of the experience of playing Bloodborne like in comics form, and I think that that still holds true today, even if in the end like the overall experience is like the it's like the hunter just basically says of using Paleborn to like transcend the hunt. Basically, it's a kind of a fancy way of like saying like later nerds, like to all the craziness that they've encountered. Like I did enjoy this, like even though it's like kind of like weird ass experience that I can imagine like other people like not having, like anyone who hasn't played the games would just like look at this and go, what the fuck, man. So there you go. Steve, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I'd say this is this first volume was probably the most fan service heavy. There's references to just about every, well, not there's references to lots of notable Bloodborne things, right? Like
Okay,
the
can
let's
can I ask you something real quick though?
yeah, go.
How did you feel about seeing you died in the comics?
I, real subtle, real subtle. As if it couldn't be any more apparent that this first volume was going to be like a greatest hits of have you played Bloodborne? There, that was it right there. The death looping, the everything they trotted out, like blood starved beast, Garamond. Like basically the first few panels involve the first area enemy types, like the very first zone you drop into in Bloodborne. It's all those enemies. Uh, there's references to everything. There's the dude who there's the guys who pop snakes out of their heads in the Forbidden Woods. There's the long ladder back to Yovsivka's clinic. I mean, it's not the snake eater ladder, but it's a long ladder. Um, the someone quotes Logarius at some point. Um, there's at the towards the end of the story there, they walk through the fishing hamlet from the DLC.
Yeah,
There's
I'll admit I never actually got to that point.
oh yes, I'm just letting you know there's that. Uh, the child has at least 40 insight because he can see the amygdalas floating around everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, a whirligig saw at some point. The hunter being canonically bad at hunting. I feel like that's more like a dig at the typical player of Bloodborne than anything else. Um,
Well,
like
you saw me play the game.
all right, fair enough. But like, yeah, like this. At no point does the hunter in this story demonstrate any overwhelming competence. They kind of do things and then they die, um, which again I feel like is more like it's more of a it's more poking at the typical player experience in a game like Bloodborne, and and then finally, well, okay, the game never explicitly states what pale blood is. So it's left pretty ambiguous. And as you stated, um, the author for this story decided to take a more literal tack and say, all right, this kid, he has pale blood. He's pale blood. Okay, he's pale blood, and he can. And so this hunter literally transcends the hunt, escapes it by going with the kid and just rowing out past the hamlet. Apparently, the orphan of Kos ain't there to like murder stab him while he's going to get on the boat. Nah, he's either off taking a smoke break somewhere or what, I don't know. But he wasn't there, and so they were able to just shove off on a boat away from everything, and you know like if it's about as happy of an ending as you're going to get in the world of Bloodborne, they got away from the madness. Where they end up, I don't know. The story doesn't talk about it, but anywhere's better than there. And so, the the as for the art style, I'd say it's pretty consistent throughout. It really captures that feeling of gothic desolation. Um, so the story's pretty It's straightforward-ish. It's still got some, it's pretty lightly sketched. Everything around the hunter and the hunter's journey with the pale blood child is pretty lightly sketched, other than to trot out, hey, you remember this from Bloodborne, like moments. So yeah, I mean, I'd agree with all your impressions on this first volume. It's the impressions of playing Bloodborne, the game, in a comic.
Yeah, which it's like, hey, it's like there's some like there's certain adaptations like even failed to like capture that. So on one hand, it's like I count that as a win for like for the series, especially for something as arguably as inscrutable as Bloodborne. And then you get to the second volume, which actually tries to explain a like an act like one of the few like concrete storylines like from the game itself. This is volume 2, The Healing Thirst, and it takes place shortly before the games itself, and essentially like tries to like talk about the like the healing church and their efforts to like to ward off the plague of ash and blood. And well, it's like it's like, and if you like delve into any like cursory like knowledge of that storyline, it doesn't end well for anyone involved. And in fact, like the game like has you playing through like the old like one of the older chapters of the city where like it's just things just like went to hell as a result. But here though, it's like we get the story of a it's like of a doctor who's trying to investigate the like the outbreak, and a member of the healing church who he comes across and who shares his like passion for trying to find a way to solve this. And it's like it's great, man. Like these two people working together to like make a better world, to try like save us all from ourselves. I mean, it's like it just like what they achieve is just like it's just so great and beautiful. And oh god, man, it's like everything I just said is bullshit because the game because like nothing ever ends well in Bloodborne. It's awful, it's terrible, and even though it's like it's like you can probably like see all the bad stuff coming. Like this is probably like the most like narratively coherent of the of the volumes of Bloodborne. Well, of the ones that Alis Cott wrote, because he's actually like like digging into like a storyline that was pretty well defined, like in the like lore of the games itself. But even then, it's like it was still like it was still like, interesting to see like how he fleshed things out like through the perspectives of of these characters. I mean, yeah, it's like this is like it's not as like it's certainly more scrutable than the previous volume, but I don't necessarily think it's like that's necessarily a bad thing for it. Especially like when you like get to the end and you see how things turn out bad, but it's bad in a predictable way that makes sense. And also, hey, it's like these it's a horror game, and like in the world of Bloodborne, nothing ends well for anyone ever, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'd agree. it's like the most it's the most like straightforward, narratively traditional story out of all of them. Um, well, again, with as you said, out of what Alice Cott wrote. It's two guys from like different factions investigating things together, like a fucked up buddy cop movie. It it works pretty well until it doesn't, and it's got a bit of that whole unreliable narrator business. And yeah, things end about as well as you might expect here, because if it seems like everything was going well, too good, really, then yeah, it really was too good. So, but yeah, I'd say this was, if you want like probably the most standalone piece of like uh, Bloodborne comic to read that doesn't really require like knowledge, like it doesn't require deep knowledge of like Bloodborne lore or anything. I feel it stands pretty well on its own. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, which is kind of like a strong thing to say for like a volume 2 like of any series. But yeah, it's like the Healing Thirst does stand alone, and like I said, it's like the other one's probably got like the deepest ties to take a bit of like fleshed out Bloodborne lore in the game itself.
So yes, like yeah, this is a pretty. It was. I'd also say this is like volume one is good for like it's good for its own reasons, and this one is good because it can stand on its own as its own story without really requiring Bloodborne knowledge.
Mm-hmm. True, and yeah. So that being said, Steve. So Steve, what did you think of Volume 3? Wasn't it just like so coherent and like understandable, or was it
Woof.
otherwise?
Man. It was weird coming off of reading volume 2 into 3, which is about Eileen the Crow, another like fan favorite character from
Fan favorite
Bloodborne.
because we know it said so on the back cover.
Yes, precisely so. But also because she probably puts an impression on most people who play the game as one of the first non-aggressive NPCs in the game who still has her wits about her, and will and fights with you on through certain boss encounters. Um, so I was like, it might be interesting to see her backstory fleshed out. Uh, yeah, it's pretty rough. I'm gonna be honest here. I couldn't make heads or tails of what happened here. Like, if the whole thing is supposed to be this sort of like this showing, not telling, of her state of mind, where reality is fleeting, her memories are fading, uh, and all she knows is how to fight and survive what's in front of her. Great, it's nailed that. As far as trying to present an interesting story that either stands on its own or requires Bloodborne context to understand, this isn't it. Uh, yeah, I think you described it best, Jason.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I hate to, like anyone like worried that we're going to like start like violently disagreeing about our opinions of Bloodborne comics at this point. You may be in for like it like maybe disappointed here, because yeah, basically like the I when I got to like A Song of Crows myself, it's like okay, it's like after coming off the first couple volumes, I thought okay, yeah, let's see what he does with like a character who has like who has a defined role in the game itself, and then I get just him like caught just telling us weird vignettes about Eileen's experience, and it honestly kind of feels like he's trying to like deliver us like like Alzheimer's, the experience in comics.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like she's just like you're remembering stuff in just like different ways, like from her childhood, like from the present, from the now, from what maybe the future. Like, okay, yeah, so you're trying to just, like create this like completely disorienting experience, for us to read. And okay, I can that kind of worked in the first volume, but when you're trying to do this like for a specific character and trying to define them by this, it's it's not the same, man. It's like it's just like I guess she said like it's unknowable, like, and really hard to parse here. It's like I mean, aside from saying that, hey, like, this is Alzheimer's the comic, like there's not really a lot that I can really, like talk about or get invested in, like with Eileen's story here. It's not told in a conventional way, which, okay, fine, man. I appreciate your effort to, try and like think outside the box here, but at the same time, it doesn't actually give us anything to hold on to, like as well. I mean, I like even the like, going off into the Bloodborne wiki about Eileen. It's like, yeah, it's told that, she is older and that, she may have come from a foreign land, which, some of the stuff talked about here, some of the images, presented here, makes sense of that. But at the same time, though, it just does not give us anything, really to latch onto in terms of like of a coherent story. And on one hand, it's like I said, it's kind of like, like spotlights, like Kott's, like weaknesses, and he's just go right off the edge of like, coherence or scrutability. But it's probably telling that, after this, he only wrote one more arc of Bloodborne, which was the Veil Torn Asunder, which on one hand, that one is a bit more scrutable in the sense that it's basically, the story of a soldier who like who has PTSD and is just, like trying to make his way through that. But in terms of like, actual connection to Bloodborne, well, that's kind of tenuous as well. It's like it kind of feels like Kott had a story about, like a pre World War One warfare that and its effects on the individual that he wanted to tell, but he couldn't actually do it on its own terms. So hey, let's do it in the context of Bloodborne. And it's just that, you got this guy who is just, writing down his experiences, and he may have killed two whores that he slept with, in the way, and then been committed to an insane asylum in the process. Which, it's like it's certainly more parsable than Eileen's story was, which, cool. But in terms of like, actually like, presenting something that, like we can actually like, empathize with and follow, well, it's only marginally better. I didn't hate this, but at the same time though, I couldn't really find any good reason to just, like actually like enjoy or say that you should read this in the same way that, hey, Bloodborne fans should check out the first two volumes, like as opposed to this one. I mean, yeah, there is like, some fan service, and then you get some bosses, like fighting this guy's psyche. Oh, and he also punctures his eyes out in a cool horror movie moment. But overall, it's like, like Veil Torn Asunder is, I understand like, why there was a gap in Bloodborne comics, after this one like came out.
It's yeah, I have to agree with all your points here. It's easier to follow what's happening compared to volume 3, but yeah, it's still pretty weird. Very very dream logic-y, which again, I think it is in keeping with what I suppose was the author's attempt to portray your someone's like fragmented mind who's suffering from uh, trauma, PTSD, whatever. And if we are generous in our interpretation of the events in it, I'd say it's the story inviting us into the character's fading grasp of reality. So in that regard, I would applaud it. Um, but as for the rest of it, yeah, it's a bit fan servicey in terms of like what is being shown, and I cannot understand why these things are happening. So, for example, at some point in the middle of the story, I forget what they're called, abductors. Maybe there's a different name for them, but
Oh
they're
yeah,
the
it's like
dudes.
yes, I know. Like it's like at the end of the first issue, like we see him face to face with an abductor. Or wait, was it the first issue or the second? Oh yeah, it was it was the first issue, and it's like, and then we see him like observe like two bosses fighting against each other. Correct?
Yeah. Oh, I don't recognize one of them. It's possible that it is indeed a Bloodborne boss. I just can't remember it. But I recognize the other one. It's supposed to be, I think, the one reborn, which is the boss of the Yahargul Hidden Village area, which is where the abductor, of course, takes him.
That's
But
right. Yeah.
thankfully, at least, the abductor in Bloodborne was nice enough to leave me with all my things when they took me there. This guy, they took everything from him. They didn't leave him some underpants. He's just naked, running around in there. Why? I don't know, but they did, and they just basically rolled him for everything they had, and then just dumped him off in the village. And he has, I guess he just starts hallucinating, or maybe he hallucinated the whole thing. It's never quite clear.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I think it works. Is like now he can just watch the bosses fight each other, and that's cool. But also, it's like I guess like now it's probably also a good time to talk about I think that like this is like a rare series where like like through all the volumes we're going to talk about, like the artist has been consistent. Because Peter Kowalski, he's illustrated like all 6 volumes of the series so far, and he does some like really like memorable stuff like throughout. In terms of like like depicting like the characters in the games itself, but also there's the bit where the main character in like the veil torn asunder just his face starts disintegrating as he's watching these bosses fight. It's like, and it's just like really kind of like impressive to see like how he just displays that kind of like degradation. It's like if even if like the art like gets, the writing is like increasingly inscrutable. I think that the art has been like really consistently solid, even as the writing just goes right off, and it's right off the rails, like in these first 4 volumes at least.
Yeah, the art, I would agree. The art was very consistent throughout, so no complaints there. You know, no rainbows, no super bright colors, just all the muted hues you'd expect of a portrayal of Yarnum and its surrounds.
And all like the blood, lots and
And of
lots of
course,
blood.
lots of blood and other fun fluids.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's like with the veil torn asunder, that was Cott's last like contribution to the Bloodborne franchise, and guy has been really quiet in terms of like writing comics in like the last several years. So I mean, whatever he's doing now, I hope he's like living his best life. But for the but hey, like as is the case with any series that had some success initially, well, like like we're gonna like get like another revisitation of it. And so now, like the final 2 volumes of Bloodborne at this point were written by Cullen Bunn, a guy who has written a lot of comics. Even has like one notable creator-owned series to his name, the Sixth Gun, but has done like lots of work with Marvel and DC. And on one hand, like dude, like I've read plenty of his comics, and they've still got spaces on my shelf as well. But he's not really a guy who I think like, oh shit, Cullen Bunn, I gotta read that right now. But he's a decent to good comic writer. I mean, like he wrote a Magneto series that I really did enjoy, and he's got a good handle on that character. But in terms of like writing other stuff, yeah, it'll either be like good to just fine. And well, with Bloodborne, well, here's the thing: these next 2 volumes that he wrote are definitely more scrutable, parsable, and understandable than any other Bloodborne comics written to this point. He's got a much more conventional and understandable style than Cott has, for better or for worse. So while you're not getting like the waking nightmare sentiment that that permeated like the first volume in terms of just hey, I don't know what's going on, and it's kind of creepy that that you get from the game, you're actually getting like a story in comics form that makes sense. And that's with the Lady of the Lanterns, which initially comes off as like an anthology series, about these characters like living in Yarnum that are dealing with like the effects of like the plague and the monsters that are that are hunting them. It's like there's let's see. There is damn it. What was trying to remember her name? Oh, Gretchen the hunter who rescues this one boy, like Abraham in the opening story, and then these it's like these two kids in the like in the following story who are just like trying to survive to the it's like to the point where like Lucien and Vivian who are trying to survive until their like father comes back, but then then like another hunter Barnabas breaks in and they have to like help save help save him as well in order to survive. And then there's a story of the priest who's trying to save save his flock and minister to them as best he could, as best he can, even as things get bad. And then there's the story of Vivian and Lucien's dad who who tries to return to them and then meets up with a happy-go-lucky hunter who is trying to do his best to survive as well. And these all come together in a final story where bad things happen. It's like, and overall it's like basically you're trading off the inscrutable unknowing nature of the Bloodborne or like From Software experience, in these stories from Bun, but you're actually getting more coherent stories that are actually able to you're actually able to understand and empathize with the characters involved that are involved in them. Like whether or not these stories are actually interesting, well, I mean, it's like I don't know. At least with the Lady of the Lanterns, I did appreciate what was being done here, and the fact that hey, they're actually tied. All the stories being told there are tied to a specific character, or sorry, specific enemy from this, the the White Lantern. And so I could at least I mean, even if we're trading off this the unknowable horror aspect of Bloodborne, it was like Lady of Lanterns at least was entertaining in that I could actually understand what was going on and could sympathize with the characters in a way that I generally couldn't with the previous stories as well. So it's kind of a trade off. I mean, did you think it was worth it, Steve?
5 and 6. I think I think they're best enjoyed with a bit of Bloodborne context, but you don't need to be you don't need to be a total expert in Bloodborne lore to appreciate it. You know, so yeah, I think they stand alone decently. Like I still think volume 2 is probably the best standalone story, but 5 and 6 provide a um, more traditional action filled story of hunters hunting uh, and a group of people ending up together to do a thing, and then a bit of a jaunt into the Chalice dungeons of Bloodborne. I will say about the Chalice dungeon reference, um, I I kind of wish we actually, both in the game and in the comic, I kind of wish we actually got to see whatever the terrible truths that were buried in those dungeons that were supposed to have driven all those who went in there mad. I wish we got to see some of that stuff because instead all I saw is, when I played the game, all I got to see was jerks who wanted to kill me in various entertaining ways. So yeah, it was pretty reference heavy throughout 5 and 6. There's a hunter with a Gatling gun from the DLC. There's the aforementioned the title calls it the Lady of the Lanterns, but I believe the enemy type is called Winter Lantern. And in the games they don't try to tempt you with visions of of what you desire or anything. No, in the games, all they do is just they just drive up your frenzy meter when you're exposed to them, and then they cause your head to explode. So
Yeah, I remember that.
I can't say there was anything nearly that interesting, and so I think it's fine if the artist decide to take some artistic license for the enemy because oh, don't let the enemy be in line of sight of you is doesn't make for compelling
Oh,
reading or action sequences.
yeah, and you're right. It's like it was Winter Lantern and not White Lantern, as I said. So, but yeah, it's like it's. I think I'm willing to like let Bun have a little bit of artistic license there in terms of just how make this work in terms of like a comic story. And I I I kind of like appreciate like how he's trying to like bring in like Lady Yarnum. It's like into the it's like who's also like a specific Chalice Dungeons enemy. It's like
Yeah,
into this story as well. So I mean, like, even if like the final story, Bleak Dominion, like does kind of like feel kind of standard in the sense that like Lucian, like the like who was rescued by Gretchen at the end of the first volume. Yeah, he kind of breaks bad in a way that's fairly predictable. It's like it's yeah, like I said, it's there's at least like some effort there made to like tell a story of like a story of his fall at least. So yeah, like I said, these final two volumes are like pretty coherent and check and even then like but even if this is like the last we'll see of like Bloodborne in English comics form, I was like I don't feel that's just necessarily a bad thing. I mean like I appreciate like Kott's work in terms of like trying to like wrangle this in, ostensibly inscrutable essentially inscrutable story of the games into into comics form. And I think he succeeded pretty well with the first two volumes. Volumes 3 and 4, considerably less so. But I also kind of appreciated Bun's work in terms of like doing a more conventional take in terms of adapting like elements of the game into the like into comics form. Like I mean, I gotta give him credit for at least attempting to wrangle um the chalice the game mechanics of the chalice dungeon into into proper story form for the Bleak Dominion. I mean, it didn't make for a great story, but at least show that this thing can be done. And he even mentioned to do it without doing a dungeon that involved like the exchange of bodily fluids. So that's good job on you there, man. So
there is that. Yes. It has, unlike I think any of the other volumes, it does a good job of, with the exception of the Winter Lantern, I think, of trotting out direct Bloodborne references, lots of enemy types and weapons and gear and concepts, and making it work in terms of a story. So yeah, in that regard, I think he succeeds. I'm not going to say it makes for them like the must read story of the year, but it's perfectly serviceable.
yeah, and and overall, I think that like it's kind of impressive that Cotton and Bun did manage to like wrangle like coherent stories out of it's like out of Bloodborne, given its like generally inscrutable level of storytelling. I mean, like hey, I just kept plunging forward because hey, there was more stuff to kill, and more stuff was trying to kill me. So there you go. But like I don't think, even though like I think that it's like some of this stuff is just like hard to parse. I don't think I'll be wanting to like divest this from my from my bookshelf like anytime soon, just because I think it's like a generally like really solid example of like trying to adapt like the mechanics and like plot points of the game in like in comics form. And and even though like there are some like clear misses here, like it's like it's like I really appreciate like the efforts the creators made in order to like like to wrangle this game's like game mechanics and plot points into story form. mean, yeah, maybe if they do try and like do more Bloodborne stories at a certain point, I'll have to think like, do I want to read this? Like, is this going to be as successful? I'll have to think about that. But I'll probably want to keep this to myself just for just a future reference, and also to appreciate Kowalski's art too, because dude like really went above and beyond in terms of just like delivering like stuff that is like recognizably of the game, like of the game world, but not just like seamlessly beholden to it. It's like he like he's a guy who I whenever I see his name on a project, I can think like, oh yeah, this is going to be like solid work here, and that's no exception to like the Bloodborne as well. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Steve,
it's go ahead.
no, you go on.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's hard to call most of this stuff must read, though. Again, I will reiterate that if for whatever reason you can manage to acquire Volume 2, it's both it's flavorful in terms of the setting of Bloodborne and a decent story on its own. So if you were to read one, I'd say read Volume 2.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with Steve there. And in the absence of like a Bloodborne remastered, which good
Ha ha
luck,
ha ha.
yeah, it's like I think it's cute how Sony. On one hand, I appreciate how Sony says hey, we're going to not work on this because we respect Miyazaki's like how Miyazaki wants to like what Miyazaki wants to do with it. But Miyazaki says like, yeah, it's like I understand that people love this and all, but it really sounds like in terms of like Sony isn't going to touch it because like they want to wait for Miyazaki to do it himself. But at the same time, it sounds like Miyazaki probably isn't going to work on it because hey, he can just do like other new stuff within From Software itself, and that he doesn't actually have to like feed Sony's coffers at this point. So yeah, so if you're looking for like more Bloodborne material to sate your need, like well, don't wait for a remaster. You're probably just gonna want to read Volume 2, or maybe any of the other volumes of this comic, because that's all you're gonna get after this decade. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, they don't seem to be able to. Sony knows they're sitting on a money printer. If they can just manage to convince him to do some work on a remaster or a sequel or something, but he ain't touching it, which is too bad for the fans and all that. But hey, he's free to do what he wants. He's printing money anyways with Elden Ring and associated properties.
Absolutely. And so maybe Sony will eventually throw the right amount of money at Miyazaki in order to get him to like do Bloodborne remastered. If not, well, like you just play it on it's like on your PS5 Pro enhanced and all. So or hey, just go read Volume 2 of this series. There you go. So
Yeah.
that's all we got for right now.
All right. Well, do you know what you're going to be talking about next time, Jason?
Well, hopefully it's like we'll be able to get Christine back to talk about the final volume of the Night Eaters. But if not, well, I've got plans that may be musical and or venomous, like in like in their in their conception. But at the same time, though, hey, Steve, thanks for coming back for this one. I like I said, I always appreciate your thoughts on this, and thanks for taking the time to read all 6 volumes.
Oh no, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And we'll catch you next time on Comic Picks by the Glick.
Later, everyone.